Oh my God, we're live on multiple platforms right now. Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. So it's just me and Connie. While people come in, we'll give it a few seconds. Connie, how was your day so far?
My day was good. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to like these questions. They keep us on our toes. I appreciate them.
Well, we still got 0, so let's give it. Oh, here, wait, somebody may be coming in. It takes a few seconds. Got to get to a different platform. So if nobody comes in, Connie, we'll just keep on talking. You should be excited to see me.
That's all right. I'm always excited to see you.
No, I was gonna say because people are starting to come in now. I'm itchy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. See, it's a little red there. Oh, whoa, we have viewers now. Oh, sorry, guys, showed a little too much. Here we go. LinkedIn just gave me the alert. All right, so real quick, we wanted to do live. Now, guys, I have Connie. Connie only gives us about an hour. Connie comes in tired.
Listen, you guys have got to know he starts these lives late, and I'll be trying. Try to hang in there, but I'm up like 5:30, and I know you're up sooner than that. I don't even think you sleep.
No, Connie. Well, you know what, Connie, you're right. There's been times when I called you at 2, 3 in the morning with a foolish. Well, you know what's funny, guys? Real quick before we get into the topic, while we let people come in, it's a foolish idea when you call somebody at 2 in the morning, but a genius idea when it's normal working day. I noticed that. Like, why are you calling me at 2 in the morning for this idea? But the same idea a few hours later, genius. Would you agree? Hey, guys, just real quick, we're starting to get people in. We're about 28, 29, 30. So, hey, guys, so I got, again, guys, live Q&A. Hello, GS Crippler. Hello, Angel Villa, Kevin Du Bois, Sandy in Canada. Guys, this video is going to be dedicated for you guys. Deanna Clapper. We're definitely going to be answering your questions. Also, I wanted to bring Connie on because last week when we did a live, there were some questions about being a female working in corrections. I'm hoping the 2 young ladies that had this great discussion last time come in because I would love for them to ask those questions so we could talk about it. Plus, having Connie's perspective, I think, would be great. Real quick, guys, Anthony Ganji, Chair Talk, books on the market, Inmate Manipulation. The link is in the description. The videos we do are sponsored by 3 entities. First entity, American Military University. Guys, online, college, grade school, supports corrections. If you get a chance, check out American Military University. It's a great way to get, bring that experience back into the classroom. Mm-hmm. We also have Guardian RFID, from cell checks to inmate tracking. If you want to digitally enhance your facilities, check out guardianrfid.com. And also the RAP. Obviously there's concerns with how we restrain inmates. There's a great tool called the RAP, WRAP. If you guys don't know what it is, there's a link in the description to a video that shows you exactly what the RAP is. And if you guys wanted to check it out, it's saferestraints.com. And you could also call them if you're interested, 1-800-RAP-911. Mention Tier Talk and you get some free training. It's not bad, right? I think so. What's up, Peter John? Now, Connie, let me give you the mic. And if you don't mind introducing yourself.
For sure. Hi, everybody. Connie Aline here. I am the founder and president of the Civilian Corrections Academy. I'm also the podcast host of the Flag Behind the Wall and the author of The Cage Was Her Cocoon. Certainly tonight, we're on live. Who knows what kind of questions are going to come our way, but we really enjoy, this kind of exchange with you all and just the engagement. So I'm looking forward to seeing what questions are going to kind of get us thinking. This good night.
Yeah, guys, by the way, guys, that's what makes the show so good is the questions that you send our way. So, guys, if you get a chance, just keep those questions coming. Usually what we'll do is we'll start into some dialogue and then see where the questions go. So I want to kind of touch on something that we just discussed not too long ago when we were talking about small talk. I guess we could introduce this and then obviously we'll shift because we did just do a video on it. But one of the things I want to mention is, let me ask you guys a question. I'll pose this to the audience. What do you guys think of small talking with the inmate population? But first, I want you to define what you believe small talking is. I didn't realize this was this big of an issue until I did a minute video on it. The responses I got through the messengers and through the emails and messages. And then I wind up doing a longer video and the video is getting some momentum. So I'll love your thoughts on, you know, what you're thinking about small talk. I mean, do you think it's an advantage for us? Maybe a disadvantage, because what we give up when we're small talking. And real quick, we would love to get the that at our facility, the wrap, but our captain doesn't believe we need the wrap. Well, if he has any questions, maybe it's fair to be objective. If the captain wants, I can get him in touch with a gentleman named Charles Hammond who can maybe answer any concerns. This way he can make an informed decision. Okay, so let's go with this. We got Jessica De Leon, but first, Amy. Hello. Amy says, hi, everyone. Field officer here. Hello, Amy. Nice to meet you. Good to come out here. And then we got which height boots is best for the front line. We'll get to that. Again, I only have my opinion on that. And then Jessica, first question of the day. I'm going to let Connie answer it first. I'm a new CO for the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. Any advice for a female officer? So I want you to know something. Obviously, Connie has a wide range of knowledge. Even though she's worked on the medical side, she's worked at very active facilities in which she kind of saw everything, passively learning, and then actually having to make decisions that worked for multiple departments, kind of what you do on the fly, no matter what admin position you may be in. But I think Connie has a great perspective of just what it's like being a female in corrections. I mean, when I worked at a female facility, it may be a little bit different, even though I was a male. I think, Connie, if you don't mind, can you attack that question for me?
Sure. So being a female in corrections, I feel that, so many times we take on this, we take on the weight of feeling like we got to be like the male officers. And I just want to just say, like, that is not what you need to do, right? Like, you come in as a female, you come in with your requisite experience, you qualify for the job being who you are. And so I would just say, please continue to do that. The other thing I would say is that there's a reason why there are males and females on the job, right? Like, we both bring different things to the equation, right? So whatever skills you bring as a female is really of significant value, and you don't want to diminish those skills by somehow trying to be something that you're not. The other thing I would say is that in my experience, now, I don't want to tell anyone how to do what they do, right? But what I found as a female is that it mattered that I knew my stuff, right? Because there was a certain way that you would command attention, not inappropriate, unprofessional attention. But if you were speaking to a group of your peers, because you speak with a certain level of confidence and knowledge, you are able to command the attention of those who are in your audience. And so, do your best to learn the policies, the procedures, the directives, because those are the things that you really want to be able to stand on. And I mean, it was random advice that I gave to my nurses. Just don't get into any relationships in the workplace. It makes for a very difficult environment if that relationship doesn't work out. And I don't know why it works out that females have a tough time when those relationships don't work out. But I've seen it time and time again when those relationships fall apart, and it makes for a very uncomfortable and sometimes downright hostile work environment. So all I can say is just keep it professional, do your job, know your stuff, and really, like, there's no need to back down. The only thing, the last thing I would say is, if you find yourself in a jam, don't hesitate to ask for support, because what I've found is that officers, civilians, the males that I've worked with have always been willing and able to be there as support and not to undermine my authority in any kind of way. So building those relationships and making sure that, you're on the up and up, like, that will take you really far in your career.
Right. I'm just going to put a link for that video on small talking. So bear with me, guys. I'm putting it in the description now. I think it's that important that we watch that. Now, for me, I'll give some. There's the link, guys. If you get a chance, check it out. It's a good video. I'll post it up here too, but you just got to control and copy that. We definitely have another question, but I do want to give some advice for the females that are working as well. First off, corrections is about heart. There are some people that may question females in a male facility. I don't. I've worked next to females that have heart. I've worked next to men who don't. I mean, all I want to know is someone, do you have my back? Are you going to step up You know, that doesn't matter whether you're male or female. That's all about the heart that you have inside. So don't let anybody discourage you because, well, you're female, you're working with men. Okay, well, how many men don't have heart? I believe that we can balance each other and really, you know, really be productive. Plus, I think that the work that we do, we're supposed to provide, along with, you know, obviously safety and security, some level of, you know, interaction with those opposite sexes. So those male inmates should be exposed to female officers. They should learn how to respect the females, just like, you know, you may have in a female facility with males. You know, we have people, obviously most of the people in our profession are professionals. And the sad thing is a lot of us tend to judge on the negative and not realizing that we should hold people accountable and don't generalize a gender or a profession based on an extreme that doesn't even come close to defining a majority of, you know, who we are and what we do behind that wall. The one thing for a female working in a male facility, I would definitely like to say is you got to set the tolerance right from day one. You know, you got to be zero tolerance for a lot of stuff. We even did a video on catcalling and compliments. You know, ignoring it is not enough. It's not. You have to address it. You have to let the inmates know that this is behavior that you're not going to sit and tolerate. The funny thing is, a lot of people think that if they ignore it, it goes away. No, not in this profession. If you ignore it, it means you're okay with it. You know, there was a story I remember where there was an inmate that gave an officer a love note. And the officer took the love note, you know, did the right thing with it. Don't get me wrong, but I want you to understand the response of this officer, and you tell me what you think. When the officer took the love note, the officer said, you know that this is not allowed. And when the inmate goes, why is it not allowed? The officer goes, because it's against the rules, policy, procedure, whatever it is. The inmate's like, okay, well, if it wasn't for the rules, policy, and procedure, we could be together. You know, when you're in this profession, guys, your why you do the things you do has to be internal. You have to believe in what you do. The better answer would be, why can't we do that? Because I said we can't do it. I'm the one that said it. Doesn't matter what policy and procedure says. I'm telling you it's no. These are the convictions. You can't, you know, push anything external like, oh, well, you can't do that because, well, why can't I do it? Because the sergeant's here today. He doesn't like it. Well, the sergeant's not going to be there tomorrow. You know, so I think this even goes with the men too. It doesn't matter, but you have to be committed. You have to make sure that when you give a directive or you give a response, if for some reason you feel you have to justify it, you really don't, but if you feel you do, you have to make sure you believe in that justification and then push that justification outwards. It's me, not the department. It's me. I'm the one that's setting the tone. And again, I think that's very important for females, males too, again, but very important for females because I want the inmates to know, the inmates that decide to try to play that game with the female, that the female puts them right in their spot and they don't point anywhere else but within. It's me saying it. Don't look at the sergeant. You know, don't look at the lieutenant. I told you. Nobody else. Connie, real quick, when it comes to that internal conviction, don't you think that matters? Because to me, inmates look for the why to manipulate. So when you know that the why is internal, it's harder for the inmates to maneuver because they're not maneuvering the situation. See, wait, real quick. When you have an inmate that's manipulating the why, they're looking to manipulate the circumstance. It's harder to manipulate you unless you allow it. So if you want to give the inmate the win, then you put something external. They can manipulate the situation. But if you want to take control and have faith in yourself, which you should do, you take responsibility of the answer and see if they can move something that's immovable. Because you should be immovable, right? What's your thoughts, Connie?
Listen, when you stand on your convictions and that's how you operate from that space, there's no way for them to be able to break into that unless you've given them some sort of in, which kind of leads back to that small talk, right? But we won't go back into that. I think that's the reality, right? You come in with certain values, principles, etc. And when you come in that way, it's very hard for you to be shaken from your position.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah, and people agree. Yup, it's not my sergeant told me or my sergeant wants a shakedown. It's me. I love it. And the best answer is always cause that ain't how I roll. You know, people even talk about the broken record, guys, it's hard for an inmate to maneuver because there's no information that they can play with. Again, the why is very important. How you justify what you do is what opens you up for manipulation or not. And what opens up for how an inmate sees you being weak or strong. You know, again, like they're saying, if I keep on justifying my directives in a manner that's weak, it's because I'm blaming the outside for why we do things. And that's weak. Even if a sergeant gives me a directive, like the gentleman said, it's mine. You gave it to me to carry out ethical directive. Don't worry, they're never going to know it came from you. It's going to comes from me inside. Gives them less reason to maneuver because the strength comes from you and not from another situation. But again, if you're a female, it's about heart, guys, both ways, you know. So and I'll be honest with you guys, I've seen females also that just have the skill to communicate, and who doesn't want that in corrections, right? When we don't have, I don't want to fight. I want to talk shit down. I'm 5'5". I'm being honest with you guys. I'm 5'5". I'm hoping I can talk stuff down, and I'm like, hey guys, but in the meantime, it's communication's key. I mean, maybe when you're young, you want to get up and guys, that's not the system no more. The system is work on that communication skill, and you know what's funny, Connie? I didn't appreciate, as an officer, you may not see the power of communication as much as when you're a supervisor and you're responsible for the team and the inmates. And you're hoping I don't have to go in and I'm hoping that, we could just have a smooth. And then you're like, hey, where's Connie? Where's Ganji? Why? Because they can talk this person down. Let's give it an effort. Because at the end of the day, when you're a sergeant and you're responsible for the team and that inmate, I want things to come out as smooth as possible. I want to try to, de-escalate and communicate. Don't get me wrong. It doesn't mean I'm not ready if you have to go in and be aggressive, but I'm going to make the effort because I don't want nobody to get hurt, staff or inmates, because in the end, you're responsible for that, But Connie, you think communication's key?
Communication is absolutely key. I mean, so I think, one of the things that like I kind of hesitate to talk about, but so there's a certain way that as females, we communicate. We get accused for over communicating, right? But I think that is the thing, the value that we bring is that we do communicate and that we're able to tap into those soft skills. We're not constantly in that power struggle. Are there times that I think we have to assert our titles or assert our authority? Sure. But I think that we do rely on our ability to negotiate and to just have that conversation. Some people don't have the patience to actually talk them down, right? And I feel that with females, we're okay with that. It's like, okay, so if it takes me 20 minutes and it doesn't result in a use of force, then it took us 20 minutes and we've now engaged in, whatever dialogue we needed to in order to get this person down, but I feel that a lot of times, there's spaces or places where people make assumptions, right? And there's no way that we could make an assumption on something that's not based on fact, especially when we're dealing with situations in the facilities. So, in that communication, you're going to be gathering information and we keep talking to make sure that we are gathering the information.
Right. That's key. And guys, and look, I want to add something to that, but I do want to give Connie a question that's posed here, but I want to add something. Communication is key, that you're in control. You ask a question, you get an answer. And a lot of people, they don't realize, you talk to an inmate and you ask a question that's a yes or a no, and they give you everything but a yes or no. They're running you around in circles. And again, we did a dialogue on small talk. I like what someone said about, small talk, the taboo, 100%. Yeah. But guys, you are in control of that dialogue, at all times. So even when you are, dealing with that crisis, that inmate that, may be a little wild and you're trying to handle it, you're always in control. At all times. You're the one that's asking questions. You're the one that is making sure those questions are being answered. There's a lot of times, guys, where we think the question's been answered. And in the end, we wind up giving up more than we have received. So again, if you ask a question, pay attention. Where's this inmate taking me? Why are we here? And then if you have to, take a breather and redirect. The most important thing in corrections is that you do control that communication. Because the communication, if you're not in control of it, you wind up going to so many places that you have no idea where you're headed. And then all of a sudden the door starts to open. We were talking about small talk the other day about, let's just talk about cars. You get into an inmate because you want to connect and you start talking about cars because you're saying trying to build a rapport. And next thing you know, the inmate finds out exactly what car you're driving. And they already know what time you come to work. They obviously know where you park, and we don't think it's nothing. And it's everything, guys. Small talk opens up the door to so many things, especially after the course of, let's say, years. Imagine working in a prison or jail. You got inmates that are there for quite some time. Imagine through small talk over the course of time, how much information can be gathered by that. So again, the small talking, the running the communication, guys, I can't stress it enough. You have to be in control of the communication. Know exactly where you're going. If you find yourself on the other end answering questions, stop. I asked you a question. You don't answer with a question. I mean, as simple as how you doing? No, how you doing? I asked you first. As simple as it is. You know what I mean? If they answer with a question, you come back with a question. Believe it or not, the person asking the question is the person in control. So, hey, why'd you do this today? Why'd you think I did it? Why did you do it today? Be the one in control. Would you agree with that? Kind of communication opens up the door?
Yeah, I mean, so anytime that someone's asking questions, they're directing the dialogue. And I think that's something that we've got to be mindful of. And not so much even just, the inmate asking the question, but, the fact that they're initiating the exchange, right? I think that in of itself is something that we just need to be mindful of. What's the purpose of the inmate coming to the desk today? What's the purpose of the person stopping in medical today? And all of a sudden they want to stop me. Why are you stopping me to talk to me? Oftentimes I think we get so caught up in the busyness of work that we stop, we answer the questions. We don't realize that, wait a minute, like this person doesn't have this kind of access to me. What made me, and I, as I'm thinking through it in my brain, I'm like, well, that's complacency, right? That you would allow someone to stop you in the course of doing your job, right? Whatever that is. And the inmate stops you to ask you a question when that's not the process, right? If someone is coming to me as the administrator, they usually write to me. So for all of a sudden, you get to stop me on the walkway and I stop and answer your questions. It's different if something directional, how do I put in a sick call or something like that, right? But the fact that, somehow you're initiating a conversation kind of puts you in the driver's seat. And, I think someone else put here also in the comments, like, that I think that small talk taboo comment is really a big one, because I agree that, it only opens the door for the inmate to ask more questions and to just deepen that dialogue.
Yeah, I'm reading a lot of good comments here, guys. I mean, they're better than the questions. I didn't mean anything by that, guys. It's just that I'm learning now from reading this stuff. Just want to read a few regards to the dialogue. Brian, the inmate is having problems. Address that problem. Make it about the inmate. Once you place yourself in that conversation and put yourself on their level, then you get into a different course of dialogue. Keep it about the inmate. Never place yourself into it. I love this too. Inmates have all the time to remember what was said, what was done, what was witnessed, anything and everything around them. That's why inmates are so successful in obtaining the best information they can to take advantage of every opportunity they get.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we have some questions. I'll get to you, Matt. Ms. Chips Ahoy asked a question. Are the inmates given a legal acknowledgement contract to sign with list of rules, regulations, and specific policies upon entering the facility? So I'll give mine. Again, I'm just talking about what I'm familiar with. Maybe Connie has a different one, but for the most part, when an inmate goes into either a jail or let's say now they're going from a jail to a prison, so the intake, which could be some centralized facility before they're sent out, each time they enter into a new area, the jail, the jail's going to have its way of things. So it's what they call an orientation. They're going to introduce the inmate to the rules, probably a handbook or something that they have to sign for. They're probably going to have to sign for acknowledgement of PREA, things that, we have to make them aware of. They're probably going to give us all their information. We're going to check them medically, mentally, whatever it is. We're also going to, make sure we have their emergency contacts in play, stuff like that. Just to it's an orientation. We have to make sure we have all the information we can about this inmate right at the very beginning. I'm not saying things don't change. They could, but we have to make sure that we receive that information at the very beginning. They're given the handbook and they sign off that they received it. That's very important because later on, if they do something foolish and we decide to charge them, we're going to refer to the rule books. and this is the rule you broke. And well, how do I know? Because you were at orientation and everybody receives this. So every facility should have some level of orientation and making sure that the inmates acknowledge the rules, because that's what you're going to use later on to write them up. Now, again, when they go into a centralized reception area or a prison, same thing. They're going to be given another orientation because each prison operates differently, or each facility operates differently. So you're going to have, the general, let's say, state rules, but then you're going to have the specific rules that apply for each facility, because each facility operates. You may have a general rule, but how it's applied at each facility is going to be a little bit differently. So inmates are going to be aware of the operations of that facility. So all because you have an inmate in one facility across the state, if they get transferred to another facility, guys, they have to go through another orientation because each facility operates differently. But orientation is key, because again, that's where we give the information. That's where we get the information. We give out all the information. And again, when we're starting to worry about our rules and regulations and having to write those inmates up, these are the moments we lean on that says, hey, you can't say you didn't know, especially with PREA too. Let's say they say, well, they didn't know nothing about PREA. Really? You didn't know nothing about PREA? Because as soon as you come in orientation, and that's the jail, the intake, the prison, probably the halfway houses now, whatever it is, you're seeing PREA all over the place. You got PREA. So it puts us in a place where if the inmate says, I didn't know about that, okay, let's go back. You attended orientation on this day. And this is a breakdown of everything that's done on orientation. So again, that's how detailed you have to be, guys, by the way, because when you go to write something, this is all about CYA. But Connie, have you thought of any other ways we get the rules out?
No. So my experience in Connecticut and in New York has been orientation and through the inmate handbook. And certainly as they go from facility, there's a different level of acclimation that they get to the expectations in that particular facility. I've even sat through some that go on in the housing unit, just to make sure like everyone's kind of dotting their I's and crossing their T's.
Right. And guys, again, she just said it perfectly, dotting their I's, crossing their T's. That's why it's done. I had one, there was one about juveniles. Hey, whoever put the juvenile question, if you don't mind, can you put it back up again? Because I missed it.
The one that says, when it comes to the juvenile field, what are your thoughts on how juveniles continue to play through their way through the juvenile system? Is that the one?
It's sort of like that. They were talking about the changes and stuff, but I seem to have missed it. PREA was just being introduced in the Connecticut prison system when I retired. Yeah. PREA became pretty strong around 2012. You should be following something. There are maybe two states that may not. But PREA really covers everything, guys. You have to be on point with that, because PREA leads to the biggest lawsuits. The only thing is that inmates know more about PREA sometimes than our staff does, and they could play it. I think the one thing good about body cams, I know a lot of people may not be a big fan of body cams, is body cams record audio. So a lot of the allegations that are made on staff are usually verbal. Like the officer was passing my cell and they said this and they said that, or they propositioned me. And what you could do now is, if that audio is there and it shows that it wasn't said because you can't hear it, then maybe when they start doing these investigations, they can show that the investigation's unfounded, which means that we were able to prove that it wasn't said, and we could start charging these inmates and stop playing this game. Because I'm going to tell you something, guys. I get the good intent, but PREA is misused by the population. It's just, you have an officer that does their job and they're getting close to maybe securing some contraband or just really getting on these inmates for, breaking the rules, but they're doing their job. Next thing you know, the officer gets a PREA allegation. Now this officer has to be moved, from the unit until he can get investigated. So, sometimes when that happens, so let's say this officer, little thing here, this officer is great. This officer is a good officer. And most of the time when they get these complaints, it's because you do have an officer that's going to be on point and the inmates want them out of the unit. Well, maybe they'll play that complaint and we do the job. Okay, unfortunately, we have to do until the investigation clears. We have to get this officer out of the unit for the protection of the inmates. We get it. But then you put another officer in that's going to do the job just as effective. That's going to keep it going. You never take that pressure off. You don't give those inmates a chance to breathe, especially if that reputation of that officer, obviously we're going through the formality, but the reputation officer is good because we know it's a game. And we do expect the investigative division eventually at one point to say, hey, guys, It's not about being unsubstantiated, because that's not enough. That just says I can't prove it neither way. We don't want that. You want to start proving that these allegations are false and start holding these inmates accountable so they can stop playing the game, manipulating moves, or manipulating not just their own moves from cell to cell, but also manipulating us, moving us, staff. But Connie, what's your thoughts on those PREA false allegations? Some people will say you can't write up someone who's making the allegation because that's going to deter other allegations. You can't win.
No, I mean, yeah, it feels like you can't win, but when you don't write, it's almost as though it didn't exist, right? And we know that it's being misused, and in many instances, it's being abused. And so if we don't, in fact, write, and if we do, I mean, so clearly we have to respond to all of them, every allegation, right, as though it were true, and we've got to do our due diligence. What I find, though, is that PREA just ties up our resources. And at a time when we're already short-staffed, we got a lot going on, I think, internal to the facilities. A lot of these PREA allegations really just take people offline and get us caught up in bureaucracy, as opposed to us really being able to get out there and do our jobs.
Yeah, I like what Sean says too, guys. Real quick though, another thing here is that we have, JPay's tough. I'm not a big fan of JPay. I'm not, but we can also get messages out to the inmates through JPay. Where they're using it, so you can put, like, when they open up their screen, you can put things about PREA, the inmate handbook, stuff like that. You can update that, even with, like, maybe a change in rule or policy, because they're using it, and they have to see that before they enter into whatever it is that they're doing. Brian says, PREA, I had 8 bloods grieve me with false allegations against me just because I wrote up for drugs. The inmates will do whatever it takes to remove a good officer so they can make their stay with softer officers easier. I love it, Brian. You want to hear something funny, guys? When you have a false PREA allegation, and I believe there's someone from the outside watching too. I'm not even in the profession, but all this is interesting. Thank you for joining the dialogue, Bar. If you have any questions, ask your family with us here. So when you like, as an investigator, you're writing up, an officer wrote up this inmate, just like you would investigate retaliation on from an officer, this could also be worthwhile. Hey, we know that you're saying this because the officer just wrote you. I mean, that's another thing that makes us hesitant in writing charges sometimes, guys, because when we go to write the charge, you may make a false allegation, which we know we didn't do it, but man, it becomes such an inconvenience because we have to get moved and we have to wait for the investigative authority to clear us. And the investigative authority, they get tired of it too. They do, but their hands are tied because they have to run it, because there's always the concern that you may have 99 false complaints, but there's that one true one. And if you treat it like it's false, that's where the liability is. Same thing with suicide. You're gonna have a lot of inmates that are gonna try to attempt suicide to manipulate moves, and it's like, oh, this is the guy's 99th time doing it. Doesn't matter, guys. Let him be successful only once. And I've noticed this too, Connie, and you can tell me the truth. The moment the inmate feels that their fake attempts aren't getting the attention, don't they usually step it up? And that's where they wind up.
They kick it up a notch and they end up succeeding, and they didn't mean to, right? I mean, I've seen it a couple of times where, relationships have gone south, and all of a sudden, the inmate is writing to their family, they're calling their family, they're monitoring, the officers' tours. They're figuring out the right time, the right space, the right place to do it. And then ultimately they get it done. And, on the medical side, I found us scrambling, trying to, provide life-sustaining CPR, right? We're trying to make sure this person survives, but, we've seen it where, they kick it up a notch. And then what happens when it goes there? And then there's that actual, at a point, I guess, completion, right? Before we used to say successful. We don't say successful suicide anymore. I think we're at the point of completion. I don't know how they designate it where you are in Jersey.
For what is it?
For a suicide.
What was the question? I'm sorry, I was reading the comment.
Do they say it's a successful suicide? Is it a completed suicide? Like, what do they say when they've kicked it up a notch and they actually do it?
He did
You
it.
know, they don't term it any kind of way. Just
I guess. I mean, I don't know. Completion sounds like it's a good thing. I don't know. I don't. No, I don't know. I got a good question, Connie. I don't want to say successful either because that sounds like it's an achievement.
Right. So, but that's the thing. Like, you know, we've gone through all like. I mean, I've found that we're always trying to figure out some way to term these things, right? Like, what do we say? What do we call it, right? So, someone has completed suicide. Someone has, you know, I don't know its completion. I don't know that it's successful, but, you know, for the person who's tried many times and they've never really done it, and then they kick it up a notch, I think, you know, I don't know if that's when they do call it successful, but it's an awful thing to experience. I don't even know. It's no successful. It is completely. Yeah.
Yeah. Successful is that's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, the thing is, guys, we always have to worry about the boy that cries wolf. I know the story is you get to ignore the boy at the end, and what happens? They get eaten. Remember that story in corrections, guys. Let that be a motivator every time you're dealing with that 100th false PREA allegation or the fake suicide attempts. Treat everyone as it's real, guys, because the moment you don't, and something does happen, you're in for some shit. Crippler question: what type of complaints are being made against staff? Isn't PREA Prison Rape Elimination Act? Okay, so real quick, Prison Rape Elimination Act covers a lot of things, guys. It really it does, you know. So yes, part of it relates to sexual assault, voyeurism, exhibitionist, harassment, which is something repetitive. Something usually deals with like a sexual proposition. We're all adults here. If you guys are okay with me saying a couple of things, because I could explain something better, but I'd rather maybe give a scenario. So if we're okay with it to give the scenario, and if I see it in the comments, I'll say it. But before we do that, also PREA covers transgenders. They're part of the PREA thing. It's basically it really deals with our housing and our play. Okay, everybody's saying for me to go for it. Okay, so yeah, I kind of figured that was happening as I got a little distracted. So guys, so obviously sexual assault is sexual assault, right, guys? We know that, right? So the thing when PREA came into play is because PREA, basically they believed that there were more sexual assaults happening than was actually being recorded. So PREA was being implemented to encourage people of the many routes that they could take to report a sexual assault or whatever, some form of harassment, whatever it is. But it was also to make sure that staff is in line with, one, protecting the inmates from sexual assault, but if they made a complaint, to protect the inmates from retaliation, from the aggressor, from staff. PREA does not protect custody or staff. It's really to protect the inmate population. Only an inmate can claim PREA. So if a staff member, says, "Oh, this inmate was masturbating in front of me," they can't claim PREA. Now, reverse, the inmate says the staff member was masturbating in front of me, it's PREA all day. Now, guys, the harassment thing is where it gets tough. So obviously sexual assault, right? So when it comes to PREA, we treat everything like a crime scene. The bodies become evidence, clothes become evidence. If it happened in a cell, that becomes that wherever the area is. I mean, inmate may have to go out for a SANE exam. The investigative authorities get in there. It's going to get forwarded up to the prosecutor. There's a lot of things in play because at the end, we if there's a concern, we want to make sure we do what we can that, justice is served, right? The harassment side is tough because let's say you have two people getting into an argument and, one inmate says, "Suck my dick," and they're just going back and forth. Is that PREA? Is it not PREA? So we tend to lean on, well, was there a proposition? Suck my dick, or I'll kick you, or I'll kill you, or kick you, whatever. I'll kill you, I'll hurt you, whatever it is. Well, now we have a proposition. Now maybe it can lean to harassment. Now, also, harassment has to be repetitive. So one of the concerns are, was this done more than once? These are just ways that, again, that we look before we go ahead and run what would be a PREA protocol, which is basically, having the inmates seen by mental health, separating them from the aggressor, doing the whole nine, and then obviously making sure that at all times we take the claim or the allegation, but also protect the integrity of that allegation until the investigative authorities can prove otherwise. The transgender part.
Before you go into that, can I just throw in there, you have made a comment.
Connie knows. Once I get into the transgender, sit back, relax. Go ahead, Connie. Go ahead.
I just want to throw out there. So for those who don't know what the SANE exam is, that is the sexual assault nurse examiner, right? So if someone says that they were assaulted, there's a certain handling of undergarments, there's the entire physical exam that's done. And the reason why that's really important is because that nurse has the ability to actually give an account of the victim's story. So the victim comes in, says this is the detail, and then that nurse can actually be called to testify in any legal proceedings. So that's what the SANE exam is, before we just jump through that, since we have some people who joined us who aren't in the field.
I just want to tell somebody I'm doing a live show. They're texting me and I'm doing a live show. Okay. So all right. So if you guys want me to discuss a little bit about transgenders and how it applies to PREA, I will. Just put yes, and I'll give you my perspective.
Just go for it.
Well, let's see. I just want people to know what has to be done isn't always of popular opinion. So I'm going to tell you, if you guys are interested in it. Okay, Sean's already got bring it. If you guys are interested in it, I will talk about it. Again, it's not about opinion. It's about what the agency. I love that. Yes, why not? Yeah, sure, why not? I would love to go to. You know what? I'm going to go out with the family. I'm going to do it, guys. I'm going to say, hey, just randomly, we're having fun. I'm going to say, guys, let's talk about transgender inmates. And I would just love for one of my family members to say, sure, why not? No. All right, so I think Connie's gonna. Oh wow, the number's going up. Now you know, now over 40. So real quick, this is tough, okay? Because again, guys, I'm opinions. None of this matters. I'm going to tell you what's expected. Our job is to protect inmates that are seen as vulnerable. Now, what do we mean by vulnerable? Transgender could be seen as vulnerable if they are in a male facility. Well, again, you have both. But let's focus first, and I won't forget about the other side, but let's focus first on transgender females. So a male becoming a female. Let's focus on that first, and then I'll give you a little perspective on the other side. But the big concern right now are males becoming females. Why? Because a male that's becoming a female could be seen as more vulnerable in a male facility as opposed to a female becoming a male in a female facility. So let's get that out there. That's why there's always going to be a lot more focus on males turning into females, because in a male facility, again, they would be seen as more vulnerable. So now our job right off the bat is to protect the inmate, the vulnerable inmates. Believe it or not, guys, an inmate that is a sexual predator could be seen as a vulnerable inmate because of their crime. An inmate that has a mental health concern could be vulnerable. An inmate that's not educated could be vulnerable. An older inmate could be vulnerable. A younger inmate, 18 to 21 and young, they could be vulnerable. So there's many
inmate with disability.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Disability. Now, believe it or not, the concern with, remember we talked about the boy that cries wolf? Kind of falls into this too, a little bit. So when you start giving the rights to the transgender inmates in an effort to protect them, and the most latest is to go ahead and bring them to female facilities. And again, let's just, have the dialogue that needs to get out there, regardless of our opinion. The effort is to protect that inmate, but you also have to be concerned because you're also sending them to a female facility. So it's a very tough choice that has to be made, because you have to think of the safety of the transgender at the male facility, and you can't isolate them. HIPAA, PREA literally says you can't isolate them based on their sexual identity. So the option is, well, if I have to protect this inmate, what's the best way to do it? And this inmate tends to say, be a real transgender. Well, usually there's going to be a review. People are going to make some votes, usually from the medical department, the operations side. probably the coordinators of PREA from the highest level. It's a decision that's not easily made. But sometimes people act in universal precaution because if they can't prove it or not, the concern is, how do we still protect the inmate? But then there's also going to be liability if you send someone who is an aggressor to a female facility. So there's a lot here. So let's just say this. Let's just start up with a couple of things. So how you got to kind of classify your inmates in a facility is 3 ways: aggressor, neutral, vulnerable. Okay, so I want you guys to think of that right now. So pay attention with me, guys. It gets a little confusing now, but it matters. We talked about the inmates that would be considered vulnerable, right? We talked a few, could be more, but we gave you some categories, right? You never want a vulnerable partner with someone who's an aggressor. Right. So if you have an inmate that has a series of sex offenses and still gets sex offenses, when they're in prison, you don't want to put them with someone that's vulnerable.
Yeah.
Especially if it's on their record that they constantly continue to act in this manner. I mean, it gets to the point where you have an inmate that gets caught in like a sex act or some exhibitionist or whatever it is. You get them seen by mental health. Keep on getting them seen. Give them risk assessments. Always cover yourself to make sure that, you get mental health determination. Is this person an aggressor? A sexual predator? I mean, is it okay with me to house them with, let's say, a transgender or someone that's vulnerable? Because, again, my concern is for the safety of that individual. Now, you do have some transgenders.
Can I just add to that? Because the key to the continuing to get them reassessed is that there's a time where their status is going to change, right? As we continue to assess them and to assess the risk that they present to the facility, to other inmates, to themselves, we want to have an actual record of that status change and what was that criteria we used in order to establish that.
Yeah, Sean, real quick, you don't want to say the word isolate. The only time you could really keep that transgender that's legally in a single cell is when they're being reviewed for a housing placement based on their gender identity. Until the decision is made, you can house them by themselves because, again, we're making that determination. But at that point, once that determination is made, action has to now say, where's this person going? So while they're in the review process, you can justify based on PREA that I can now have this person in a single cell by themselves why this matter is being reviewed. But once there's a decision made, you cannot, by PREA, you cannot isolate them. They either have to go to that female facility, or now that we said the gender, the assignment is appropriate, like so at the male facility, then you now can place them back in the male facility. But once the person's going through that PREA review, that's the only time that you can place them in some form of, I'm not even gonna say isolation, because guys, you don't want that word out there, because even when they're in this single cell, they still have to be awarded rec, kiosk, everything that would come with the regular general population inmate. They can't be seen as being punished because they're going through this review to determine if they're going to be placed in housing that's more appropriate with their gender identity. But so we have the aggressor and we have the vulnerable. So we don't want them placed together. So again, if you have, if you're working good with your officers that, you're the ones that handle the moves, the placements of the inmates, we kind of do like a color code system. Let's say red, sexual aggressor, yellow, vulnerable, blue, neutral. So you never want to have a red and yellow. Those colors don't mix, Now, you also don't want to have an aggressor and an aggressor. Now, you could, guys, this is where it gets confusing, but bear with me, guys. You could have a vulnerable who is an aggressor. There are transgenders who do have sex crimes. So now, because they're a vulnerable, but they're also an aggressor, let's house them with a neutral. This way, we protect them in case the vulnerable side, but we also protect a vulnerable inmate from living with them. So there's a lot going in play here when dealing with the placement of that inmate until it's been decided what we're going to do with them. Now, once they go to the female facility, as Sean said, it is a nightmare. You do have to protect those female inmates. But you also have to make sure that by protecting those female inmates, you don't violate the rights of the transgender.
So
okay, now,
Derek had a good question up there. He says, how does this apply to body searches? Would a woman have to do the search?
I could get this done. Okay, guys, so check this out. So when an inmate has declared that they are a transgender, and guys, it's not transgendered, it's transgender ER. You have to realize something. That self-declaration carries a lot of weight because it's hard to prove that they're not. Mm-hmm. So mental health is going to lead a lot on that self-declaration. Now, don't get me wrong. They don't just stop there. They may call family. They're going to try to find a way to see who was this person before they entered this facility. The problem is, even if they get a history that negates the declaration, and then they could just say, I became it today. I'm a transgender today. So the self-declaration can supersede the diagnosis. But for the most part, if mental health is not on board with the declaration, they may not be okay with treating the inmate, giving the inmate the hormones and all this other stuff, because maybe the inmate, they don't feel that the inmate's in a stable mind to make that life-altering decision. Yep. But the self-declaration may be enough for the inmate to request a search preference. Now, what does that mean? That means once the inmate has declared that they are a female, or they feel like they're a female, they may be offered the chance to say, well, who do you want to be stripped by, males or females? And this is where the problem comes in, because you may have some that are real, not discrediting that, and we want to be respectful. I get it. Really puts a lot on the female officer, but again, it's the tough job that they do that people don't know. So again, for a female, bravo for stepping up and doing this, because it's hard. So for those that are stepping up, bravo. I have a lot of females that also, based on their religion, they're not allowed to see another male's component, but they step up. They do what their job is. And guys, these are the heroic things that no one even says. Because to me, that takes that's a hell of a lot to ask of somebody, but for them to step up and do it, it's amazing. Bravo to the women that have to step up and do that. But with that said, they're allowed to get that search preference. Now you have some that are going to play the game because they know, hey guys, guess what? I'm getting stripped by women, and then they start bragging about it. And then you have other inmates like, I want to get stripped by women too. So, it's that universal precaution, but eventually you're always waiting for this one person, one staff member, like maybe mental health more or a higher up saying, you know what, I'm going to say no this time. Someone has to set the precedence to make it harder for the inmates to manipulate the system. Connie, what's your thought? I mean, imagine if you had to strip. I'm just saying, but what's your thoughts on what was just discussed?
Listen, I think, from a professional standpoint, we all can be professional and do what we need to do, right? No one ever wants to feel like they're being forced into that situation, though, right? Especially if you have an inmate who is malingering. The last thing that you want to do is now you're being forced to strip search someone or pat search someone who is just they playing the games, right? So I think from a professional standpoint, we just have to do what we have to do. Is it a good feeling? Absolutely not. It is an uncomfortable feeling. And that's just, the reality of our world, though, right? I always think about, sort of what does the unions do in these positions? How do they support, the officers who don't want to have to be in this position? What do we do, right? Like, because I think that's the thing. I think, yes, it's a requirement of your job, right? And so you just kind of suck it up and do what you have to do. But, if it is something where, I shouldn't be forced to do this thing, we know this guy is faking, I feel like we can't ignore the fact that, as Sean just said, that the staff do have rights. So I'm like kind of, I'm on the edge with it. I think, yes, we can all be professional and do what we have to do. But I also feel when someone's malingering, no one wants to be forced into that situation.
Now there is something I want to mention too about this, guys. Think about this though, guys. So now, again, guys, nothing's gonna be popular opinion here, but we have to discuss a perspective here. Okay. Sean made a good point. What about staff rights? So now when you have the unions against the female stripping a transgender, in order to ease conflict, higher ups are going to say, well, guess what? We just won't strip transgenders. Because I have the right of the transgender and I have the right of staff. And now I'm not going to be in the middle of making a decision against that. So what are they going to wind up doing? What's the easiest way things always happen? I'm not going to look to compromise.
The extreme.
Extreme. Yeah. So guys, the more that I get it, I get it. It's very tough, but let me just mention this just for food for thought. I get staff rights. Please, guys, don't take it the wrong way. I'm not negating that. I get that. But when it becomes that complicated, the higher ups have to think, well, what do I balance? Am I going to balance the inmates' rights or the staff rights? And 9 times out of 10, guys, they're looking at the inmates. You know that, and I know that. But let's say by chance we wind up saying, you know what? Let's focus on the staff rights. What's going to happen, guys? They're going to wind up saying to balance both, we just don't do strips anymore. So now you got contraband and stuff coming into the facilities that, you know, all because it could be a game play. Now you're going to have a lot of inmates claiming that they're transgender, you know, because they know they're not going to be stripped. You know, I prefer a female, but we don't have no females here to strip you. Well, I guess I don't get stripped then. Guys, don't think it's not impossible for it to happen, guys, because these talks are happening every day. Talks of not stripping transgender inmates. So just be careful of the battles. You know, be careful of, yeah, we got some shifts, but make sure that we think of it in the long run. I get the right aspect, but if I had to choose, and guys, I know I'm not a female, so don't. Well, I'll ask Connie this. Connie, in the middle of the battle, if you have to make a choice, you know, you got the rights of the officers and staff. I get it, guys, but just hear me out. And then you have, you know, the rights of the inmates. You know for a fact they're going to settle with the rights of the inmates. It's just how the world works. And now staff says, well, I don't want to strip. And the department says, well, at this point, we're just not going to do any strips. You think that's a good resolution?
No. I mean, I think, you know, when you think about how much stuff, I mean, being on the sort of going through the process of sitting with like my security depths and looking at all the stuff that's found in searches, that's found in the yard. I mean, even listening to Russ many times talk about the things that he found in the yard, like I just couldn't imagine half of that stuff still being out on the compound because we're no longer searching. So yeah, I absolutely would have to just suck it up and do what I had to do because ultimately we all want to go home to our families. Yeah, and that whole safety aspect is critical.
Look what Christy said. You know, I'd rather search and allow contraband. Now, I don't want people to twist and say, wow, that means we don't care about staff rights. You got to understand.
No,
I sugarcoated it the best I could. That's not true. But you know what I do care more about? Staff, maybe staff safety, if you want to look at it that way. Mm-hmm. I mean, yes, I get the rights, but if I had to choose between rights and safety carries a lot of weight because that's going to guarantee me hopefully going home. So sometimes in this profession, we lose a lot. And I wish we didn't have to, but this is a tough choice. That's definitely maybe a question I'll post on my Facebook page, you know, but just to get a vote, you know, if you had to choose this or this, what would you choose? And I'll guarantee you most of you guys will answer it just like Connie and Christy Malone said. Contraband is the bigger concern. So step up and do what's expected until there's a medium. But right now, guys, just be prepared for that. Be prepared for the battles that you face that you only think in the moment, but there's a ripple effect that you don't see. And I'm going to tell you, another thing, because this matters too. The people that bring up these battles, these experienced front line, when you bring up these battles for these immediate victories, you're the only ones that are expected to see the ripple effect. Don't expect the people you're, you know, voicing these concerns to know what's going to happen 6 steps down the line. So before you present a battle to address an immediate need without realizing where this can go or the Pandora's box, ask yourself that. Hey, if I do this because I'm so upset with this, where does the door open? Because when you present it, no one's looking at that, guys. They expect you, when you present that problem, to have answered A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all the way down to Z. You know, so they're going to go there and think, well, it came from a frontline person. They have experience. I'm sure this was all thought out. Let's go ahead and do it. And then it finds out it wasn't thought out. And now that you got this A going, the facility's dealing with B, C, D, and F. I mean, would you agree with that, Connie, or am I off?
Yeah, no. There's just so much that goes on behind the scenes before we could even see any immediate impact. You know, and I think that's, you know, one of the things that the front line doesn't get the opportunity to see, that there is so much happening before it gets to the point where, we actually see some sort of change being made. I think there was one thing that I wanted to kind of speak to, which was MK made posted a comment to go back to the male female. People want to dress in drag, whatever, but we have got to stop encouraging this BS, right? So, funny story, I was, working in Connecticut, and my warden had the first transgender inmate come into the state. And he called me to his office and he said, Connie, I don't know, what am I supposed to do with this shit? And like, my warden's just always really professional, and I didn't see that coming. And I said, well, we would do it any other inmate, right? She goes through the intake process and all of that. And so he says, listen, if she got the bells and whistles, then she stays here. I'm not sending her to a male facility and to a female facility. And so I said, I get it. At the end of the day, though, if there are expectations that are coming from above, we have to do our best to comply with those expectations, because otherwise it seems as though, or we help build the case that we can't manage this population, right? So we weren't expecting this. It was the first time we had a bra sent from the female facility into a male facility. The offender had not completed the gender reassignment. So the offender had all the bells and whistles, but also actually had breast. And it was creating quite a stir in the housing unit. So, as much as we want to just kind of stick to the black and white, they're male or female, like we're being kind of forced to deal with the in-between, even though we don't want to.
Yeah, I want to mention something. Chips Ahoy asked a good question. I'll attack it first, and if Connie wants. What if there was no one available to do a search? Could they have trained medical staff take over and do the search, or can they make that a standard that they have to be searched by medical staff? Okay, so real quick on this. So every policy and procedure always has an exigent circumstance, something that we could fall back on, again, as defined by the emergency. So if this transgender, let's say, let's even do this. Let's go a little bit more extreme. Let's say I'm working at a female prison or jail, and for some reason, there's no female staff, and we have an emergent condition to strip an inmate, some security concern. As long as we can define that emergent reason, again, no females here, and then the context of why the strip search has to be done. So again, guys, don't forget the context of why that strip search has to be done. And then obviously the limited staffing. You can go ahead and use a male, but I'm gonna tell you something. You better exhaust all ranks too. So I may not have a female officer. Okay, do you have a female sergeant? Do you have a female lieutenant? Do you have a female captain? But they have to be of custody. You're not going to put that on medical. That's not medical's job. That's not for them to do. We're looking for, that's for the officers. The way they search an inmate is a lot different than the way medical is going to.
I was going to say, medical isn't trained to do that in many states. I think one of the things we have to realize too is that not all medical goes through academy training. Some of us have some abbreviated version of academy training, but we don't get that requisite training. And so, I think that we would be more vulnerable even if we did pull a medical personnel in, because would they know what they were doing, and would they miss something? That would be a concern for me.
Facebook got it correct too. Out of desperation, I've seen some people do that. I've actually seen police call the county jail or the prison for a female law enforcement professional. So yes, I agree. If there's a good partnership with the agencies. Hey, what about transgender pods? Okay, let me explain this part real quick. The concern about that, besides the fact that the ACLU will be all over you for what they would consider isolation, HIPAA violations, whatever they want.
Segregation.
But I got another thing, guys. Always worry about that wolf. How many people, inmates, sexual aggressors, will try to manipulate their way into a purely transgender pod? Think about that, guys. If I got a pod that's dedicated to transgenders, all of a sudden the transgenders in my population is going to go up, because there's going to be some sexual predators that's going to want to go into that pod. So that's on the surface, again, we talk about the ripple effect. On the surface, sounds like a great idea because we're looking just to end the concern for the transgender. Very myopic perspective. What we want to do is we want to go higher than that. It's not just about the transgender, but it's about the operations of the facility. What is this going to open up the door to? So, I mean, what's your thoughts, Connie, transgender pod?
No, we can't do a transgender pod. I kind of feel it's almost like, I would imagine there is some sort of HIPAA concern built into that, right? Because now everyone know that if you're housed there, that you're transgender, and it is your personal information, whether you choose to share it or not. Hey, Russ. But I really just feel that we do open ourselves up to that vulnerability of, those who can manipulate the system well enough to get into that unit. And then what level of control will they have over an entire unit because they are the wolf in that particular space. And essentially we would have put an entire unit in danger.
Yeah. Hey, Derek, I want to get to Tyler's question too, but Derek first, because it's quicker. Caseworkers need to build some type of policy to determine the validity of a transgender claims that would avoid. It's hard. It's hard to prove they're not, because again, the way it is I could just decide I can go to work tomorrow and say, hey, I feel this way. And it's hard to prove that I don't feel that way. It's a lot of liability because again, universal precaution. What about if you don't think it is and it is? So there's a lot of weight on the person that has to say no. We need someone to do it. I'm not saying that, but guys, before that no is done, I'm talking about crossing every T, dotting every I, kind of exactly what Connie said. That's not that easy to do, Derek. Yeah. I wish it was. I mean, even if it's obvious that you don't think they are, it's not that easy just to say no, especially with the way politics is right now. But I get it though, 100%. Hey, I want to attack. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Hey, Russ. Real question in the comments. What's a better boot, 6-inch or 8-inch? I keep on getting that, and I keep on forgetting it. Now we're talking on here. Tyler asks a question, kind of. I don't know if you want to get out of first for me. It doesn't matter. But so, what if you had a pod that inmates hop rooms constantly, and you have a transgender in that pod? How do you enforce room hopping when other COs don't? So I get part of what they're saying. So first off, guys, the biggest thing here. Yeah, I like that. I love what Sean just said. Wolves are controlled by active sheepdogs. Okay, guys, let me just tell you something right now. The biggest concern, we have a lot of concerns. I keep on saying the biggest concern. Yeah, but, at this point, one of the biggest concerns, there's always a big concern, is the consistency when it comes to 8-inch boots. They blouse better. There it is. The consistency in enforcing the rules, right? I mean, you may not see it between officers that are working together, between shifts, between supervisor and front line. When you talk about your question, was that Tyler? The bigger concern is not the inmates hopping the pod. I'd be addressing the officers that are operating the inconsistency.
Do it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not focused on the symptom. The symptom is what the inmates are able to do. That's a waste of my time. I'll fix the symptom and they're going to do it again tomorrow. I'm going to go after the culture. So if I was a supervisor or myself an admin and I'm watching this, the first thing I'm going after is the next level down. And then they're going to go after the next level down until we do get some level of consistency. But the only reason why that is happening is because it's allowed. Yeah. And if you want to address it, don't allow it. If that makes any sense, Connie?
Yeah, no, we don't even need to go there. I mean, honestly, because the inmate can't choose to hop, right? Like they've got to get authorization from somewhere. And so I think getting to the root cause of how they being allowed to do that would be, the first thing that I would want to do, because at which point, if it's a training issue, you want to make sure that we address it. Like, because, from an administrative perspective, you can't just decide, right? Like, I would like to say that we're all empowered. We have some level of empowerment, but at the end of the day, there's no way that could be happening and it not be questioned.
Yeah, by the way, that is a great question, Tyler. I know Connie came off a little bitter.
No, I didn't. Get out of here.
But it was a great question because look what you just did, though. We talked about, what you see on the surface, but is that immediate response may not be the solution. Right. Take a step back and let me look a little deeper because, again, dealing with the inmates not the problem. It's dealing with the staff. The way the question was focused, what do I do with the inmates? No, it's what do you do with staff? And, again, go to your supervisor. I like, Russ, lock the doors. Matt, our boy Matt, lock down the lowers, whatever. I mean, but each answer they're saying represents a level of control. You get that? So in order to respond back to your answer, what are they doing? They're going back and advertising the control of the staff over that unit. So it's a correct answer. That's only happening because we're allowing it to happen. So again, and to be honest with you guys, that's not even a problem that we should even have to worry about. Sad to say, but it's not. It's a waste of time if we're spending so much effort worrying about that when the solution is someone going to step up and do their job? Or are we going to spend more energy working on something that really is irrelevant if people aren't doing their job? Look at every problem. I love that, Russ. And Puck said, North Carolina Sergeant here. Can you guys address false PREA towards officers and how to address it? Okay, so I do have some answers to this. Do you want me to go first, Connie? Or you want to go? You want to get your thoughts out first?
No, I mean, we covered that in the beginning, but I do think
I think there's something else actually, if I can.
Yeah. So certainly, and so I've had the experience of there actually being deep dives into those false PREA allegations towards officers, and I've witnessed at least 2 females actually get additional charges for that. So, it may be in different states where, you can pursue some sort of recourse against those allegations, especially if it had some sort of impact on your reputation as well as your role in the facility.
Yeah, so I agree. But we're going to have to lean on a lot of things with this. So real quick. So obviously, the facility has to act on universal precaution. We know that. The inmates know that. PREA allegations made, protocols have to happen, and the effort to protect the population, the integrity of the allegation, the person making the complaint, it runs the gamut, right? Which could include, especially if you had a female facility, having that officer not deal with inmates directly, transfer it to another facility, whatever it is. I mean, you have to limit the threat. And inmates know that, especially when you are, I want to thank Anthony Kintier Tucker. I just purchased your inmate manipulation decoded and share your YouTube. Oh, thank you, Christy. Thank you for adding value to our show today. I appreciate your participation. So we know why the false allegations are usually happening. It's because maybe staff's on some momentum, onto something, or maybe it's retaliatory because I wrote the inmate up, or I found some contraband. It's so funny. The moment I found contraband, you're going to say that I also touched you in this area or whatever it is. So you do need the investigative authority when allegations are made to kind of understand the context of it all. Doesn't mean they don't look. Of course, they look into it all. But again, hold on. I called Uber for some water. And
you are going to be in such trouble.
Oh, yeah. It's live, babe. It's live. Yeah. That's the wife, guys. Yeah, so I'm on the couch. So anyway, the investigative authorities obviously have to know that, okay, these are the reasons why we could possibly get PREA allegations, but they also have to treat it as if it could happen. So there is going to be a universal precaution method right off the bat. Protect the inmate. And it's a hassle. Even if you know the inmate's playing games, it doesn't matter. You got to protect the inmate at that point. Now, here's the thing. During the during the investigative process, obviously why this officer has been removed, you don't want to speed through the investigation to the point where you lose an exhaustive measure to really see if there is a concern. But you also don't want to leave the staff member hanging out there for so long that people start to question who that staff member is. Because I've seen it, guys. An allegation's made right off the bat. No way, that officer do it. No way. And then when the internal affairs is dragging on the investigation after 30 days, well, maybe something did happen. You know what? So you want to make sure that it's done in a manner that, is, exhaustive. Yes, but you're not, just running the time. But also, if the allegation proves to be, the problem is body cams are going to help us with this, guys, because most of the allegations that are made are usually verbal false allegations that we can, hear. If you have body cams, and then the investigative authority can actually come back and say this investigation is unfounded, therefore we can hold the inmate responsible, charge them for lying, falsifying. I love what Russ said, Connie, civilly. All this stuff matters because the investigative authority is the one that's going to push the effort up. But now if it comes back unsubstantiated because we don't have enough proof that it didn't happen or that it did happen, well, the problem is no one's going to take that. The other concern is that's tough for me to put the person back on their post. You haven't given me enough. Oh, but it's good. No, you haven't given me enough, guys. I don't know. We have to make an effort to prove it false or truthful. Either way, action is needed. But with that said, we know why the inmates may be doing that. So we have to try to keep that momentum going. As I said, if you have an active officer and another officer, bring another good officer in. You know, don't take the pressure off. Don't give the inmates a chance to breathe if these people are getting those false allegations. And the other thing is, guys, is the integrity of the staff member. You know, there's got to be something done more than just putting the staff member back at their post. There's got to be something said or something documented that said that this officer did not do what that allegation said. And I think that comes from the investigative authorities really exhausting every effort, just as much as you're looking to prove that the officer could be guilty, you should look to prove also that they're innocent. Be fair in that aspect. And when the officer is innocent, there should be something out there that reestablishes that officer's credibility. It really does matter. But again, how the agency reacts, in my opinion, is to keep the momentum on the inmates, let them know, okay, you know what? I get that you understand the game and how we have to react, you know, but we could maneuver a little bit. You know, hey, you got this officer. Then if I'm the supervisor, hey, you know why they pulled Ganji, right? They're playing the game because Ganji's got something on this guy, and this inmate wants Ganji off the unit. So, Connie, do me a favor. You got the post, go right back in there. Now, the problem is slick because some will see that as being retaliatory because the inmate made the complaint. That's where you always have to document, because obviously if the staff member's onto something, when they're being interviewed, the staff will say, listen, I know why this is happening. This inmate has contraband, blah, 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 blah. They don't want me getting it. So as long as you can document it, well, it seems like it was retaliatory because the inmate, made a sexual allegation. Now staff is coming after them. Yeah, but it was revealed during the interview that the staff member had said he believes the allegation was made because the inmate had certain contraband that poses a threat to our security. So you may think it's retaliatory, but am I supposed to ignore what that staff member said and not go after that threat? No, I have to. That's my job. That's my job. I'm not telling you to come after him the day after day after day, but I'm telling you not to stop either. You just have to do it in a manner that could be justified, because it's very tough because the inmate can claim retaliatory. But again, if there's a reason to go there, you don't stop it. Do never be afraid. If you're doing your job, guys, listen to me on this, because it's in my book too. If you're doing your job, don't be afraid of the inmates that say, well, I'm going to write you up for retaliation, or I'm going to call my lawyer, or I'm going to do this. Do it. Because in the end, you're not going to stop me from doing my job. And if they want to sue me, let them sue me, and my professionalism will speak the whole time, you know, throughout this case. But Connie, the retaliation, I'm going to call my lawyer, you know, that gets played out a lot. And that makes people hesitant from doing their job, correct?
Yeah, but if you know you're doing the right thing and you're documenting everything along the way, it doesn't matter who they're going to call. Doesn't matter who they intend on reaching out to. Like, those threats are really just empty, right? Because what you're doing is by policy and you're documenting each thing that you're doing. I think a lot of times where people get jammed up is that they start taking steps and they haven't documented the steps, nor have they provided in that documentation the justification for those actions that they're taking. And so, you know, all I would just really just say is that they can throw that out there if they want to. At the end of the day, if you know that you're doing what you know you're supposed to do, you are following policy, and you're documenting the why. Here's what I did. Here's why I did it. Here's what I'm going to do. You know, whatever your next steps are. Like, I think that's when they can see that you're thoroughly covering yourself, but also you're painting a picture that anyone who picked up your document would understand what you were doing and why you did it.
And this is why we love Christy. She's a special investigative agent and she investigates PREA. If we have the evidence to prove the inmate lied about the allegation, we write them up for the false statement. And that's something that you could definitely push up. I love what Russ said before, the civilly. And don't forget, we don't need permission to search. Jails aren't the streets. Sure, you may need to articulate for strip searches, but general searches nothing's up. Yeah, I agree. We're not asking for permission. We're doing it. We're just explaining why, just in case someone wants to challenge what we do. Connie, real quick, before we go, I know we're getting close to the end. There was something that you responded to.
No, I had just asked Christy, so what would be the consequences, like following the write-up?
So I think the write-up could lead to what Russ said too. You could push that up because a false allegation, if made on the streets, would still carry some weight because it deals with the person's credibility, integrity, and also, again, their life gets shifted. They could be bitted. Now they can't work that post. If they're making, let's say they're an officer that makes overtime. Well, now maybe they can't work overtime because they can't be around the inmate population. All right, guys, I guess I'm going to kind of start wrapping it up. This was a great dialogue. We'll try to do one soon. Guys, this was really, we covered a lot today. Hopefully, enough for what you guys wanted to cover. I also noticed, guys, something new. I could record videos and upload them as live, which means that I could put it up, and then we could also be in the comments, dialoguing with you guys. Christy said the inmate there's consequences. And I think but you need the investigative authorities. I love what Christy said. They really need to be okay with exhausting every measure to get that evidence, because sometimes they don't go the extra mile, and it kind of leaves a little bit of a like, well, what am I supposed to do? Because if you have a staff member that result is unsubstantiated, that's not enough for me to want to put that person back on their post, because I don't know. It's neither here nor there. Cecilia, good night. Great conversation. Anthony and Connie, doing what everyone here, like a family. We're always family. And guys, we will be in Nebraska next week at the conference. We are going to have a panel discussion. Me, Kearney, Nebraska, Connie, Nebraska, William Young, Kearney, Nebraska, Gary Cornelius, Kearney, Nebraska, and streaming in live that day to help me, because I'm going to start off with whatever the speech at the beginning, the center speech. What's it?
The keynote.
The key. I should remember key. I'm a correctional officer. I was impressed today, guys. I still have the skill because I had about 20 keys and I got the lock with the first key. Now, these are skills that people don't know. That's a skill for me, damn. It's all I got. But the keynote, after we do that, then we're going to have the panel. So I just mentioned the four, and then streaming in live because they couldn't come to Nebraska. We're going to have the famous Russ Hamilton. Oh, Cecilia, I don't know where you're at, Cecilia, but we'd love to have met you. I know Connie, definitely, with me too. We love your interactions with us. Louis Soto and Gary York is going to make an appearance, from True Prison Stories. Hey, Connie, you like to say anything in closing?
I just want to say this is always a lot of fun. I have a good time just going through the dialogue. I appreciate just the warm reception that I get. A lot of times it's like, oh, what is the civilian going to bring to the table? But I think, the years in custody and the ability to just engage has just been great. And I think, hopefully I'm bringing enough value, but you guys teach me something new all the time. And so I really love it.
And also, hey guys, real quick. Real quick. It's a Q, not a C. I put a C in there for some reason. Hey guys, real quick. Connie got a commercial for her business, the Civilians Corrections Academy. So maybe next time she could give us a sneak preview of this great business that she does that will save lives and ultimately have a facility that, limits the security threats. So again, Connie, if you don't mind, maybe tomorrow or next time we go live, we could see that new commercial that you have.
For sure.
All right. So remember,
I will definitely share it with you.
Miss Chips Ahoy, Mr. Ganji, Miss Eileen, Mr. Hamilton, and Tier Talk from America, Heart America. I have fun in Nebraska. Come to New York. We would love to come to New York. We're just waiting for Governor Cuomo to invite us, but not a good time for him. Not a good time for him. You know what I mean? Actually, PREA. We could have talked about Cuomo today. A lot of Cuomo could be a little bit of it's got a little PREA going on there. Now, hey, welcome to the correctional officer. He says, you know what's funny, Connie? He says it didn't happen to him, right? Well, guess what? We deal with it all the time. So that's a PREA allegation. Welcome to what we do in corrections, because the moment we get a complaint, they try to remove us.
Pretty much.
Hey, guys, don't forget the books on the market, Manipulation Decoded. Oh, we got Minnesota here. Come to Texas. Oh man, I would love that, guys. Soon when I retire. Congratulations from Mr.
We were
Sahoy.
supposed to go to Texas.
Yeah, guys, I had a few conferences, but we can only do 2. So we also have a virtual one. Hey, guys, the Arizona, the International Association of Corrections Training Professionals, it's a virtual training. So look it up, IACTP conference. I don't know what it costs, but it's a virtual training. It's for a couple of days, and whatever the cost is, you get that. We're on that too. We're going to be out there, and yeah, good grief, Gange. And I promise you guys, if we're doing the virtual training and I recognize you and I know you're there because I recommended you, I can't give you a discount. I don't have any control of that, but I could say, hey, I know you, and then go right back to teaching. It doesn't do nothing for nobody, but I can do it. Hey, guys, again, if you haven't, the show's Tear Talks to you, Brave Men and Women Networking Corrections. Please stay safe out there. And don't forget, subscribe, interact, engage, share the content. And as always, guys, more importantly, again, as I said, I'll say it twice, stay safe. Love you guys.